What's up, guys? So I've really been looking forward to doing this review because ever since I first drove the Honda WRV earlier this year in Thailand during a media preview, it was immediately apparent that this was a direct competitor to the Perodua Ativa. Honda Malaysia denies it though. Honda Malaysia says that the WRV sits in its own segment. Talking about segmentation, the WRV as well as the Ativa, they're either in the A segment or the small SUV B segment. But whatever segment they are in, I think what matters most is the pricing. So the WRV, the cheapest WRV in the market, costs 89,900 ringgit. The model that you see here, which is the flagship model, the RS, costs 107,900 ringgit, which is quite expensive. The Ativa, for comparison, costs 62,500 ringgit for the cheapest entry-level variant and roughly about 72,000 plus for the flagship model. So in terms of pricing, they can't be more different. It's obvious that they are perhaps not competitors in terms of pricing, but in terms of segmentation, they're small SUVs. So yes, they are competitors in that sense. I know those that are price sensitive will probably think that this comparison is nonsense because the Ativa obviously wins because from a price perspective. But what if price was not an issue? What if somebody just wanted a small SUV and didn't really care about the price? This is what this video is for. The Honda badge is everlasting. It's a powerful brand. So much so that there are stories out there. Now I cannot verify this, but there are rumors out there saying that girls will not marry some guys unless they're driving a Honda. It's true. I heard that. If somebody can verify that, please leave a comment. So anyway, let's dissect these two models and see how they are. And if price is no issue for you, then I hope to be able to solve your problem. Let's do this. Now, if you followed my reviews, you know that I usually don't like to talk about design because I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Either you like it or you don't. What's beautiful to me may not be beautiful to you. So design is something that I usually stay away from unless it's a supercar or a classic car or something like that. But I think in between these two, it's very obvious that the WRV has the fresher design. It just looks better. But the Ativa, even though it's not very old, it's starting to look a little bit dated. But it's not to say that it's ugly. It's just the WRV has a better design. Both run on 17-inch wheels, and the WRV, when you first lay eyes on it next to the Ativa, even though in terms of dimensions, the WRV is shorter, lower, but it's actually wider. So it has that stance, that very squarish stance. The Ativa, as soon as you lay eyes on it, it looks bigger than the WRV. So in that sense, I think if you're looking for a bigger car, the Ativa will probably do it for you. But the WRV has some pretty intelligent packaging as well, which I'll get to shortly. And again, in terms of features, in terms of design features, well, besides the fact that the WRV is just slightly smaller, the Ativa slightly looks a little bit dated, doesn't it? In terms of boot space, which I feel is quite important in this segment, the Ativa offers 369 litres, whereas the Honda, the WRV, offers 380 litres. Now, it may not seem like much, but if you come here, notice that the WRV, the boot space is lower. So things may not get moved around a lot. Whereas in the Ativa, it's just here, which might be easier for you to store stuff, but stuff will also roll around. One thing I like though is this cover, this tonneau cover. It may just be a cloth, but what's important is that people cannot see what you have in the boot. In the WRV though, you don't get any such thing. which is a bit of a pity. And in case you're wondering, yes, you get a spare wheel, a real spare wheel, and the same for the Ativa as well. Important stuff. Very important stuff. So yeah. I've always liked the interior of the WRV. I mean, if you first look at it, it's a good-looking design, it's simplistic. It's how cars used to be, not overly fussy and such. And it comes with proper tech as well, such as this 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system over here. We are in the RS model, so you get 6 speakers. If you go for the non-RS model, you only get 4 speakers. And besides that, you also get pedal shifters, which is connected to a CVT transmission. You get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You get the Honda Sensing Suite as well, but without the low-speed follow. Safety systems are basically everything. 6 airbags, I think, and basically everything that you could need. In terms of quality, as long as you're looking at it, it looks good, it looks proper. But as soon as you start, poking and prodding, this part over here I really like. It's nice, soft touch, and I like the red accents and such. The non-RS models, if I'm not mistaken, have blue accents. So with that, I think it's a fuss-free Honda. In terms of comfort, the seats are a little bit small. Now, this is the furthest back that I can sit. And the steering wheel, it's just tilt. It's not adjustable for reach. So this, for my height, I'm roughly about 180 centimeters tall. This is my sitting position. Furthest back I can go. I can't go any further. So, and notice the thigh support is actually quite small. So in terms of comfort, it's just that. It's just okay. However, if you're on the shorter side, you might find it quite decent. If you're on the taller, broader side like me, maybe you'll find it a little bit cramped. Now, we did drive this car from Bangkok to Pattaya, roughly about, I think, 200 plus kilometers. Not bad lah, but after some time, it starts to get a little bit tiring. But I really can't find a lot to complain about, because at its price, what else besides the Ativa, there's no other option for a small SUV. The ride height is actually taller than the ground clearance, it's just about 20 millimeters taller than the Perodua Ativa. And this actually gives you a taller ride height, slightly taller ride height. Not as compared to the Ativa, but just generally as compared to a sedan. If you're looking for a small SUV because you want a higher ground clearance and a higher sitting position, it probably doesn't get better than the WRV in terms of pricing, at least. I think you're gonna like it. In terms of quality, you get this synthetic leather and such. I really can't find much to complain about as far as the WRV is concerned. It's just that. Now let's go check out the back seats. Now, at the back seat, well, there's really not much that is going on at the back here, so there's not much to actually talk about. What I can tell you though is that there are no air conditioning vents at the back here, and neither are there any USB ports. There are 2 USB ports at the front, and plus a 12-volt socket up front. You do, however, get a 12-volt socket at the bottom here. So you can buy the aftermarket accessory, the cigarette lighter USB port, and put it in there. So that would solve your issue. In terms of spaciousness, well, it's just that. I can imagine going long distance. I think I'll be quite okay, quite comfortable in fact, and it's not something that I've not done before. As I've said earlier, we did the drive from Bangkok to Pattaya, where I did spend some time in the back seat as well. No complaints. So in that sense, again, fuss-free. Now, as soon as you jump into the Ativa, right after the WRV, I've got to say that things really are vastly different. It immediately becomes obvious that the Ativa is more spacious. because you have this center console that is slightly higher up, so this sort of means that you have to rest your knee against the center console, but that's no big deal. Besides that, you get a bigger screen. You get a 9-inch infotainment screen, where else the WRV has a 7-inch one. However, the Perodua does not come with Apple CarPlay. It doesn't support Apple CarPlay. Or even for Android users, you have to use the Mirror Link system to sort of mirror your phone onto this, which is a bit of a pity. It's 2023, guys. Apple CarPlay, come on. So, but besides that, I really like the fact that you get these cup holders over here. You know, I think that makes a lot of difference. The driver gets that as well, and I like it over there, even though it sort of gets in the way of the air conditioning vent. Of course, you have these vents over here, but besides that, it keeps your drink cool. So that's something that I really like. Perodua Myvi owners will recognize this place. It's basically almost the same. It's no wonder that they call the Ativa the crossover model for the Perodua Myvi. Anyway, in terms of quality, I think it's roughly about the same as the Honda WRV. It's just that the Ativa feels slightly more spacious, especially in terms of headroom. That is very obvious. Back seats now, let's go. The back seats, however, feel a little bit cramped for some reason. Look, I didn't get this in the WRV. My knees were not scraping up against the front seat. It feels a bit small at the back here for some reason. Perhaps it's the way the car has been packaged. You don't even get air conditioning vents, and neither do you get an armrest. Where else in the WRV, you get an armrest. WRV, you don't get an air conditioning vent either, and neither do you get 2 USB ports. Where else in the Ativa, you get 2 Type A USB ports. Powering the WRV is a 1.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine, making 121 PS and 145 Newton meters of torque, sending power to the front wheels through a regular CVT transmission. Now, this is actually better suited for fuel efficiency because it just needs 6 litres to travel 100 kilometers. That's roughly about less than 15 ringgit to travel 100 kilometers, which in my books, it's not bad, but I think the Ativa does it better.
The Ativa is powered by a 1-litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine that produces 95 horsepower and 140 Newton meters of torque. Just like the WRV, it also sends power to the front wheels through a CVT gearbox, but it is more efficient. It needs just 5.2 litres of fuel to travel 100 kilometers, making it more economical than the Honda.
Alright guys, so before we take the Perodua Ativa out for a drive, which is something I'm really looking forward to do because I haven't really driven the Perodua Ativa until day before yesterday, I think. And I gotta say that, again, from a price perspective, there's no beating the Ativa, right? So this is the top spec model. It is priced at 73,400 ringgit. It's just a no-brainer. I'll tell you how it feels like to drive in a short while, but in terms of safety technologies, it comes loaded with it. It even comes with ADAS system. So Perodua calls it the Perodua Smart Drive Assist. It's a long list, hence why I'm referring to my phone. So it comes with pre-collision warning, pre-collision braking, pedal misoperation control, front departure alert, lane departure warning, lane departure prevention, lane keep control, blind spot monitoring, auto high beam, adaptive driving beam. You get the gist of it. So it basically has everything that you would want in a car. So, and that is just the active safety systems. You also have the passive safety systems such as airbags, ABS, traction control, the works. So in terms of safety systems, the Perodua is amazing, very impressive, there's no doubt. So now that we've got that covered, let's go take it for a drive. So in terms of driving the Ativa, the 1.0 3-cylinder turbocharged engine feels a little bit rough. The vibrations, you feel the vibrations, but that is a typical character of the 3-cylinder engine simply because it's off balance, right? There is 3 cylinders, so one is basically protruding out alone like that. So because there's 2 cylinders here and 1 cylinder here, so it's always off balance, which is typical of a 3-cylinder engine. So usually you use a counterbalancer or a balancing shaft or something, I can't remember what they call it, but that is typical of a 3-cylinder engine. But because it uses a turbocharger, now let's see what happens if I put my foot flat. It makes a lot of noise. In fact, makes a lot of noise. This CVT gearbox is very noisy. Too noisy, in fact. Yeah, it just makes a lot of fancy sounds, and at about some speeds that I shouldn't be doing, you hear a little bit of the world outside. You hear a little bit of tire noise, not so much, you know, but it's noisy. Vibrations are there and such. Right after this toll, I'm going to try that again. Let's do this. Seems to drop power a little bit, so I'm going to try to go for this corner flat out. So the suspension is better tuned for comfort, I would say. This is, after all, a family-oriented or SUV, small SUV, so it's better suited for comfort, which it does really well. There's no doubt about it. The suspension is soft. It does a really good job at soaking up the roads. So from that sense, it's good. But if you're the type of person that likes to drive hard, you might find the suspension a little bit too soft. So don't drive too hard, lah. But besides all of that, I think if you slow down and just drive the car the way it is meant to be, I think you'll like it. Because it's just normal. At this speed, at 90, 80, 90, you don't hear much of the world outside. There are motorbikes passing by, I don't hear them. You hear a little bit of the road, just a little bit tire noise, not much. Suspension is soft. The response of the powertrain is quite impressive. That's basically the turbocharger responding to every flex of my right foot. It's different from a Myvi. A Myvi is powered by a 1.5 litre engine instead of a 1.0, which is in this. So this is a car that is better suited for economy, which it does really well. Now let's go jump in the WRV. So as soon as you step in the WRV, it feels more expensive. It definitely is more expensive, so that is actually stating the obvious, but it feels like it as well. Everything feels more premium, and yeah, even though the screen is actually smaller, but it's actually feels nicer in here for some reason. I also like the positioning of the center console. It's lower. The positioning of the center console in the Ativa is higher. So that one you have to rest your knee against the center console. This, you can just sit normally. And so in terms of safety systems, again, both these cars are almost equally matched. Just like Perodua has the Smart Drive Assist, Honda has its Sensing Suite, called which consists of collision mitigation braking system, lane keep assist, road departure mitigation with lane departure warning, auto high beam, adaptive cruise control, lead car departure notification system, remote engine start, which is quite convenient, and forward collision warning, active safety systems, and of course passive safety systems as well. Now let's drive this thing to see how it feels like. So the Ativa, the character of the Ativa, there's no doubt that the Ativa is a incredibly comfortable car to drive. I mean, it has to be, right? Let me just get comfortable with this thing. Okay, so
the Ativa it just does everything that is meant to do really well. Of course, that CVT transmission can be really noisy, irritatingly noisy even, but the vibrations from that 3-cylinder engine is quite obvious as well. You don't get a lot of that over here. Granted, I'm still in a parking lot, so this is not a place to judge its character. But having driven the WRV before, I think it's just a lot smoother to drive, a lot more comfortable to drive. I like it, does a really good job. The suspension, yeah, it's a little bit on the harsher side, a little bit on the stiffer side, but yeah, you feel the roads a little bit, just small dips and ruts and bumps, you feel it in the WRV. But that also means that handling is more impressive, especially in faster corners. Let's see, let's get out of here. I want to put my foot down so I can... Noisy as well. I would say it's probably just as noisy as the Ativa, but not as harsh. You don't really feel the vibrations from it. You hear it, you don't feel it. But handling of the WRV is much nicer. It's more obliging. Now let's try that again. Noisy. Feels more urgent, feels more powerful. I actually have to raise my voice to talk to you. That's how noisy it is. But boy, this car handles so much better than the Ativa. The suspension of this is slightly stiffer, and what that means is it obliges every input of the steering wheel, but then again, just not as supple as the Ativa. I think it's a small price to pay because it's still quite comfortable. And let's listen to the CVT again. Okay. So it's making a lot of fancy sounds, right? It's noisy in here. Oh wow. But at some really illegal speeds right now, approaching top speed even. Time to slow down. And I repeat this again, handling is so much better. Handling is way better. So in terms of NVH, I think it's better than the Ativa. You hear a little bit of the tire roar, but you get that in the Ativa as well. And I'm passing by a truck right now. Let's see if I hear its diesel clatter. It's very minimal, very minimal. So that's of course impressive already. So now I'm just trying to pick up speed again, and it's obliging. Yeah, it's definitely a nicer car to drive than the Ativa, that is for sure. I think in terms of noisiness, it's just the gearbox, the CVT gearbox of the Ativa is noisier, but everything else in terms of vibrations, there's lesser vibrations in the WRV, and noise insulation from the outside world. I think it's just the same as the Ativa as well. I'm amazed at how closely matched these two cars are. It's amazing, in fact. So I'm hard done. I think I like the fact that the Honda is a nicer car to drive in terms of the handling that it has to offer. Wow. I'm blown away, if you can't tell.
You know what's the worst thing about my job? Telling you which car to buy. Because especially in situations like this, when the cars are so evenly matched, Obviously, in terms of price tag, the Ativa wins. There's no denying that it's so much cheaper. At 30,000 ringgit cheaper, close to 30,000 ringgit cheaper, it's just a no-brainer, right? Because even if you're putting a 10,000 ringgit deposit, 10% deposit, that's 3,000 ringgit more that you have to pay. And 30,000 ringgit more will probably add up to a couple of hundred ringgit more in terms of monthly payments. So in that sense, I think the Perodua, from a price perspective, obviously wins. However, my heart lies with the WRV. I appreciate the spaciousness of the rear seats. I like the fact that it comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. In my books, that's very important. And even though the front seats are not as comfortable as the Ativa, but I'll be entertained. I do wish that the WRV had the front seats of the Ativa. That would have just perfected the package. So in terms of pricing, if you're coming from a price-sensitive perspective, the Ativa just wins this hands down. But if price is not an issue, imagine this with bigger wheels, lowered. I think it'd be a really amazing car, and it's much more handsome as well. So if price is no issue, definitely Honda WRV. Thank you for watching. As usual, do consider subscribing.